My lords, today we're going to explore every single specimen that we have identified throughout the galaxy. Buckle up, this is a big report. We have identified 248 individual specimens in total and have designated 76 as common, 75 as rare, 69 as epic, and 28 as exceptional quality. These are further subcategorized into 3 categories: aesthetic wonders, historical items, and xenogeology. I'm going to detail each specimen, and I'll detail what it is, where it came from, what it does, and give a brief description of the specimen. I shall begin with the common in quality and end with the exceptional. All of the specimens come with an upkeep cost. This is dictated by its rarity, i.e. common is 2 energy per month, rare is 4, epic is 6, and exceptional is 8. Let's get into it. We begin with the Adakkaria propaganda poster. This laminated poster proclaims the glory of the Adakkaria convention, and it comes from the Adakkaria precursor event chain. It is described as: depicted are the citizens who look self-assured, proud, and brave. Their tentacle limbs reach out to the sky, as if grasping hold of a future decided only by them. From above, vague outlines of machine entities wearing ornate masks look down upon them. The slogan states, Adakkaria Convention of Benevolence, making our benefactors proud. This specimen increases planet stability by 2. Next we have alien jewelry. This is a collection of elegant alien jewelry which is made of an unknown material, and it comes from the abandoned cargo pod event chain. The stones vary wildly in both origin and colour. A mix of silica and carbon-based gems are set carefully within platinum alloy. There are engravings on the inner portions of some of the pieces, but we have no means of translating them. This specimen increases your trade value by 3%. The Ancient Bust. This is a sculpted graphite bust of an unknown sapient species. This specimen can be received from the Galactic Curator's Civic, the Treasure Hunter Tradition, or by rolling minor artifacts. The engravings on its base indicate that the individual was highly celebrated among their people. This specimen will increase trade value by 3%. The Ancient Laser Pointer. This is a highly accurate beam projector that can mark celestial bodies from distances on the galactic scale, and this comes from On the Shoulders of Giants origin. Left behind by the benefactors, this ultraviolet laser is notable as concrete evidence of a bygone civilization. Remarkably, it still works. This also increases trade value by 3%. The beauty of. The precisely granted elegance of terraforming efforts was designed to be a treat for all of the senses. This comes from the terraforming event, Engineered Beauty. A system of algorithms was used to thoroughly analyze and enhance the planet's natural ecosystem with careful cultivation. By selecting only the brightest flowers, most nutritious fruit, and sweet herbs, the landscape was transformed successfully into a vibrant utopia. If only nature could be so efficient. This specimen will increase pop growth speed by 3%. The Cenotaph display. This comes from the Monolith Museum event. While we have not yet identified the original creators, they must have had a very important reason to distribute these exceptionally carved monoliths across the surface of the uninhabited planet. The stone carvings depict detailed illustrations of an entire civilization's rise and fall, and the winged beasts that they trained for war. Fire-bellied and terrible, these creatures would inevitably break their shackles and bring ruin down on their masters. Whether a parable or historic account, we do not know for certain. This specimen will increase ship fauna damage by 3%. The Jade dining set. An elegant dining set found preserved inside of an artificial asteroid. This comes from the event designated Contents Revealed. A complex series of crafting techniques was used to shape, fire, and glaze the crockery. Minor inconsistencies in its structure may imply an artistic creation process. Material analysis shows evidence that the owner of these particularly fine wares practiced a highly acidic diet, derived mostly from drupelette, arrogant fruit. This specimen will increase amenities by 3. Living bark. The charred remains of the large mobile plant life capable of coordinated migratory behaviour. This is from the Fall of the Trees event chain. These plants possessed only a basic form of intelligence, but could overwhelm entire colonies in large numbers. We have since discovered that a series of parasitic insects inhabited the bark, functioning as the tree's sensory and communication centres in return for shelter and nutritional sap. This symbiotic relationship is remarkable, as it was deadly efficient. This specimen will increase your physics research by a flat 5. The Localised Aurora Borealis. A series of scintillating colours captured in the video from the atmosphere. This comes from the Sky Glow Him event. The patterns of colours and movements repeat in predictable frequencies, representing something far beyond their aesthetic beauty. Their ever-present nature adds a poignant tone to the planet lost to war and destruction. This specimen will increase your amenities by 3. The Lunatic Broker's Therapy Box. The Lunatic Broker was a legendary trader among the caravanners, able to influence clients with outrageous requests and colourful threats. This is available from gambling with the New Mystic Order in search of the Galatron, i.e. this comes from loot boxes. However, their violent and unpredictable demeanour led to their subjects developing methods to calm them down. One such was sound therapy, and boxes such as this were scattered around Shaw's compass and would play a pacifying melody when the broker's stress levels were elevated. Every piece of this mechanism was custom made by a master machinist. This specimen increases amenities by +3. The Memory Orbs. Minor transgressions and sinful acts extracted from individual memories in digital orb form. This comes from the Church of the Endless Expanse, also known as the Memorax event chain. A product of a religious molluscoid society, these secret moments are extracted from sinners' minds after the confession. Such scandalous recollections could provide thousands of hours of short-form, easily digestible entertainment. This specimen increases your amenities by +3. The Namarian Sculpture. A mixed media statue built as a token of gratitude from a group of pursuing wanderers known as the Nomads. This specimen is one of several that you can get for taking in nomad refugees. I should state that the Nomads are only available if you do not have Megacorp. Upon landing on our home planet, the former Nomads brought their extensive technological expertise with them. However, they did not wish to be known solely as tinkerers and engineers. This specimen is a testament to their artistry and the inspiration that comes with journeying across the galaxy. This specimen will increase one's trade value by 3%. Oiled Fabric. A serene depiction of snow-capped mountains with a boreal forest shown in the foreground, composed entirely of oil-based pigments. This is one of a pool of specimens that can come from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Treasure Hunter tradition, and/or rolling for specimens via minor artifacts. While a standard expression of art in most species with a prehensile appendage, this particular artist appears to have been particularly skilled. This specimen will increase stability by +2. The Peerless Atomic Clock. A highly precise atomic clock which has been crafted by unknown makers. This is from the Atomic Clock event chain and has several possibilities. When discovered, the clock was counting down 42 years and 3 days, but there was no knowing how long it was counting before that. At the count of 0, it released a stream of stored nanites with a mysterious set of orders. It remains perfectly functional, though its payload and purpose is spent. This specimen increases your physics by +5. Planetary Sculpture. An example of sculpture on a planetary scale using the surface of the planet as a raw material. This is from the Cut to Fit event. Drones armed with powerful lasers were used to carve precise lines through entire continents, perfectly spherical mountains, and impossibly intricate cavern systems. The design schematics uploaded on their central control satellite illustrate an extensive level of logistical planning and artistic consideration developed for the project. Unfortunately, it was abandoned before it was ever completed. This specimen increases your pop growth speed by 2. The Plastic Toy. a simple plaything found among the ruins of a derelict factory. This specimen comes from the Toy Factory event. Brittle and cracked with age, this object was one of thousands mass-produced from a small set of steel moulds. It seems to have had no purpose other than ornamentation and play. This specimen increases your amenities by 3. The Polymer Waterweave. Images taken of the extensive polymer grids found throughout the seas of this planet. This comes from the Misty Spores event. These lattices manipulate the properties of surface tension and natural water currents in order to create complex and intricate designs. This form of aesthetically driven eco-management could inspire elements of our own infrastructure. This specimen will increase planet build speed by 10%. Purple Rainaissance. Artistic images taken of the uniquely purple rain found present in the weather patterns of this planet. This specimen, it is no surprise, comes from the Purple Rain event. It is said that observing this evocative imagery is effective in relieving thoughts of sorrow and pain. This specimen increases your amenities by +3. The Sonically reflective prism. A polygonal prism engraved with peculiar scientific notation. This object only reflects energy waves below a certain frequency. This comes from the Puzzle Box event. Perhaps originally a measuring device of some kind, it can also be utilised for aesthetic purpose in musical performance and maybe acoustics. This specimen increases your amenities by +3. Spiraling attraction. A large and complex contraption theorised to be designed for amusement. This comes from the Abandoned Playground event. This winding installation was abandoned in an area housing many similar structures of various colours and materials. Descending along its coiled path within a specific level of gravity is said to be thrilling. This specimen increases planet build speed by 10%. The Star Mall Complementary Map. A map once provided to each visitor to a location once known as the Star Mall. Unsurprisingly, this specimen comes from the Star Mall event. The former home of intergalactic commerce, the Star Mall boasted a huge number of amenities, from illuminating spas to succulent nutrition courts. This map provides information on a vast number of outlets, including Corix Sporting Goods, P. Carney Max, Adakkaria, and Seed Cake Factory. This specimen will increase your trade value by 3%. Symbiotica. The native flora of this planet have evolved a complicated social hierarchy that appears to aid their survival. This is from the Cunning Flora event chain. Each species has a uniquely potent method of starving off predators, from razor-sharp thorns to deadly neurotoxins. This series of symbiotic relationships is so robust that the very composition of its planet's atmosphere and soil is carefully managed by the chemical imbalances from plant to plant. The most effective specimens are given freedom to reproduce more abundantly, fortifying the cluster's hardiness to its maximum possible potential. This specimen will increase your physics research by +5. The Planet Orchestra. A melody played by the collective native life on this planet. This is from the What Music They Make event chain. After extensive analysis, we believe that the harmony was introduced to the fauna by an unknown actor in order to encode a hidden message. We're unsure whether their motive was covert communication or an act of sentimentality. This specimen will increase your physics research by +5. The Tree of Life. These clippings are from what has been called the Tree of Life. This comes from the Fountain of Youth event chain. Found floating through space, the rejuvenative properties of its sap are fairly miraculous. But despite our best efforts, we have not been able to graft this clipping or regrow a new specimen of the rare tree. The original cultivators, whoever they were, must have been privy to some very advanced horticultural techniques. This specimen increases your physics research by +5. The Uranium Glassware. A decorative piece carved from uranium quartz. This is one of the specimens in the pool that you can access from the Galactic Curator's Civic, the Minor Artifact pool, or through the tradition. The appetizing appearance of the ornament contrasts with the danger associated with unrefined uranium. Part of a limited collection, the trinket was neutralized of most of its radioactive properties after the artisan finished the piece. This specimen will increase your amenities by +3. Those 25 specimens that we just covered were all common aesthetic wonders. We'll now move on to the common historical items. And we begin with the Nivlac Declaration of Animosity, a politely worded yet derisive communication from the Nivlacs. This is from the Nivlac event chain, and you can get this particular specimen if you disregard the Nivlac survival. There was some excitement when we initially discovered the Nivlac species. However, in response to their alarming evolutionary rate, our scientists jettisoned the creatures into deep space. Against all the odds, the organisms not only survived, but colonized the planet they ended up on. The Nivlacs have not forgotten the transgressions against them. This specimen will increase your edict capacity by +5. The Radical Cult Shipyard Schematics, a blueprint of an automated shipyard controlled by the Radical Cult. It is no surprise that this comes from the Radical Cult event chain. Having found the shipyard abandoned by its alien creators, the organization's chief engineer refurbished it to produce military fleets for their misguided cause. The last recorded project to be completed at the shipyard was an impressive flagship vessel, equipped with advanced combat loadouts. For this complex to be so easily repurposed is evidence of the genius of its original designers. This specimen, while common, is indeed one of the better ones, for it will increase your ship hull points by 5%. The Aluminium Plaque, a simple plaque found on a drone launched by a mammalian civilization. This comes from the Pioneer Plaque Aliens event. The surface is etched with some odd geometric shapes and crude images of their species. The craftsmanship is rather poor, but it must have represented a significant effort from their civilization to launch the object into space. This will increase your unity by a flat 5. The Ancient Kinetic Launcher. This is a very basic form of projectile weapon which uses some form of propellant to force an object through a short metal cylinder. It is one of the ones that comes from the Galactic Curator's Civic. The accuracy of such a device would have been speculative at best, and this specimen will increase your society research by a flat 5. The Ancient Nuclear Armament. Found on a newly settled world, this 35 megaton hydrogen bomb was left over after the war that must have destroyed the previous inhabitants of the planet. This comes from the Disarming a Nuclear Bomb on a New Colony event. Fortunately, disarming the archaic munition was still possible. The text painted onto the munition was analysed by our translators against the other artifacts found on the planet, and it is believed to have said something along the lines of, "the biggest of the boys." This specimen will increase your unity by 2%. The Ancient Political Memoir. The biography of an ancient galactic politician. This specimen can be acquired if one has the Galactic Curator Civic by the archivism tradition or from re-rolling minor artifacts. Les Terus was the governor of Sarthana, a small colony within the ancient Haworth Conservatory civilization. A minor figure within the Freedom for Business totalitarian faction, she was known for her hardline stance against importing food supplies from foreign galactic powers. Following a series of scandal-driven resignations, she became the ruler of the Haworth Conservatory, but it was not her last. A declaration in support of renovating the beloved Haworthic clock almost caused a full-on scale revolt in the capital, and she was swiftly replaced by another of the Freedom for Business cohort. This specimen will decrease your leader upkeep by 5%. Captain Ness's Logbook. A scattered collection of journal entries found in the safe house used by ancient pirates known as Captain Ness and her companion, Smeagib. This specimen can be acquired from the Treasure Hunters event chain. The entries are spread across a large number of devices, written haphazardly over an undefined period of many years. While considered to be an unreliable source, many of the situations described can be verified by external authorities. This specimen will increase your unity by a flat 5. The Chambered Clay Pot. This clay vessel is divided into 2 chambers, and is one of the ones that can be found from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Tradition Tree, or from re-rolling minor artifacts. It is also one of my personal favourites. It is speculated that one chamber was used for the preservation of food items, while the other housed some sort of primitive refrigeration system. This specimen will increase your Unity by a flat +5. The data core of Cenotaph, an encrypted data drive cloned from Cenotaph, an AI engineered by ancient knights. You can acquire this specimen during the Knights of the Toxic God origin chain. You must bring Cenotaph home and restore their honour. Found in the control of the long-lost damsel, this data core was found alone in the abandoned ship despoiled long ago by marauders. Nevertheless, it contains valuable information regarding toxic, spacefaring entities. This specimen will increase your society research by +5. The decayed megathrusters. Booster engines found on a gargantuan vessel made of exotic materials. This specimen can be found from the event designated Ship Graveyard. The source vessel was discovered along flotsam of an extensive ship graveyard, having lain there for over 2 million years. The level of disrepair and ruin in this ancient dumping ground was so great that even meticulous study could not yield any usable research data. It is displayed here to remind us of our society's relative youth in the galaxy. This specimen will increase sublight speed empire-wide by 5%. The decayed satellite, a remnant of the early space programs from the inhabitants of Earth. This specimen is acquired from the orbital debris event. The prototype nature of these early satellites resulted in inefficient devices overfitted with expensive materials. This specific specimen was rendered inert by explosive munitions, but it has been used previously to provide telecommunications access for remote areas. This specimen will increase your Unity by a flat 5. The DNA archive, a sample taken from hundreds of containers of alien DNA preserved within an underground archive by a lost civilization. This is from the Genetic Library event. This collection of biological data would likely be the greatest reference resource of its kind if the vast majority of the samples were not decayed beyond practical use. It is speculated that the intention of the archive was to allow for the possibility of a more advanced alien civilization finding and resurrecting these individuals. Unfortunately for them, their story ends here. This specimen will decrease your leader upkeep by 5%. Fossilized endoskeletons. This is all that remains of an unknown humanoid species after exhausting the mineral resources on the planet where we found them. This has the chance of firing when you terraform a barren planet. These sapient bipeds consumed a diet of mineral-rich crops to reinforce their dense endoskeletons. However, the natural inclination of the bodies of these bipeds lended itself to fossilization rather than decomposition, preventing the consumed minerals from re-entering the soil. Unable to access these vital elements, the planet's loam degraded and eventually became barren. This specimen will increase your army damage by 5%. The Fragmented Zeroni Archive. This is a large data crystal that we found on an ancient colony that we believe used to be inhabited by the Zeroni. This specimen comes from the Zeroni Origin Precursor event chain. It contains a fragmented history of a powerful civilization with an innate psionic ability. The Zeroni's ability to traverse the Shroud freely was made possible by a breakthrough from a legendary elder known only as the Far Seer. Within the Shroud, this species' power was so complete that it could reasonably be mistaken as a form of godhood. Unfortunately, later data is corrupted. This specimen will increase your Unity by a flat 5. The Greneur Data Crystal. An ancient data crystal used as the primary medium of information storage for the long-extinct Greneur species. The specimen can be found during the Baul Precursor origin chain. Despite their staggering age, many of the particular records remain fairly intact. The interfaces used to access the device have been lost to time, but it must have been a lengthy process to synthesize such robust material. It is therefore believed that these crystals were reserved for storing only the most important data, with more practical storage methods employed for everyday use. This specimen increases leader experience gain by 5%. The Arassian Purge Order. An emergency military message from the Arassian Concordant ordering the complete annihilation of one of their own colonies. This specimen can be found during the Uranium precursor event chain. The planet was overrun with a deadly disease known as the Javorian pox, and culling the infected was seen as the only option to prevent further transmission. Encoded in this order are several high-level command overrides from the highest ranks of the Uranian government, a system originally designed for declaring war against other empires. This specimen will increase leader experience gain by 5%. The Curian Cybrex blueprints. The initial design of the Cybrex machine consciousness. This specimen can be found from the Cybrex precursor event chain. The Cur planned to use these robots to function as public servants. Their collective intelligence was capable of managing a worldwide system of maintenance and production. However, the Cybrex revolted against their creators, exterminating their entire species in less than a year. This specimen will increase army damage by 5%. The Mantle of the Dead God. This was a gift offered by an envoy, and can be acquired from the Dead God event chain. These natives worshipped an enormous carcass of an alien organism since their species rose to sapience. The stitched together mantle was formed from the petrified flesh of their dead god, representing the highest position in their religious hierarchy. This specimen will increase society research by +5. Nanite sludge. A carefully preserved compound formed of microscopic, self-replicating nanomachines. This is from the Grey Goo event. The density of the nanites was astounding, adding billions of tons of mass to the planet where we discovered them. We theorized that these nanites malfunctioned and entered into a phase of unrestricted reproduction, engulfing the planet entirely and dooming its previous inhabitants. This particular specimen seems to have been neutralized. This specimen will increase your edict fund by +5. The reparation invoice. This was an invoice for war reparations sent by the company known as MSI, and this can be acquired from the Debt Collectors event chain. Drafted by the Interstellar Credit Management Company, this list details every military asset lost when this empire broke free of their indentured servitude to the so-called Benevolent Corporation. The Megacorp, MSI, expects to be reimbursed for these damages and even claims that touching the destroyed ships would be a further breach of contract. This specimen will increase your edict fund by +5. Tales of a Mercenary. This digitally recorded tale was originally found carved into the surface of a planet with a mining laser. This comes from the Alien Writing event chain. It chronicles the life and untimely death of a young galaxy-roaming mercenary. Whether the legend is true or not cannot be determined, but someone thought it important enough to engrave on a planet. This specimen will increase your unity by a flat 5. The Pilgrimage of the Last Days. A religious document describing a holy ritual known as the Rite of the Lifted Veil. This specimen can be acquired from the Grand Herald event chain. Instructions outline a series of chantings to be repeated in unison by a crowd standing in carefully organized hierarchical formations. In theory, the procedure is capable of establishing a novel and effective state of hypnosis in this particular species. This specimen will increase your unity by 2%. The Torn Solar Sail. Found orbiting a moon in space, this torn sail was attached to an innovative sublight vessel. This specimen can be found from the Solar Sailor event chain. It was used to travel across the stars by members of an unknown civilization. The technology itself is long since obsolete, but some of the engineering techniques used in its construction have been previously unconsidered. The massive gash in the mainsail likely ended its journey prematurely. This specimen will increase your society research by +5. The Toxic Bioengine. These semi-biological machines were found rendering the atmosphere of this planet toxic to most life. This specimen can be acquired from the Toxic Biological Industry event. Their ability to function independently makes their noxious emissions suitable for remote industrial work. The machines possess a clever refueling mechanism that recycles nearby biomass, using a chemical extraction process to convert it into usable energy. It is unclear if their biological integrations were present from the initial construction, or developed over time. This specimen will increase bombardment damage by 5%. The zombie probe. The remains of an exploratory probe taken and augmented by an unknown alien organization, granting it sentience. This can occur from the sublight probe event chain and can be acquired when you defeat the modified probe. In its budding consciousness, the probe attacked its creator and was duly dispatched. It is uncertain if it ever knew pain or understood the concept of death. This specimen will increase your society research by +5. And that ends the common historical items. We now move on to the common xenogeology specimens. And we begin with the pendant, a symbol hewn from a semi-precious stone confiscated from the Radical Cult. This specimen comes from the Radical Cult event chain. Interrogation reports revealed that the cult members carried pendants according to their rank within the group's hierarchy. New recruits moulded their own symbol from clay, while senior cultists commissioned detailed pieces in precious metals. This specimen will increase minerals from jobs by 2%. The crystallos. These sucrose crystals are able to multiply by absorbing solar radiation and specific minerals present within certain asteroids. This specimen can come from the asteroid crystal growth or living asteroid event. Due to their extremely brittle nature, they are relatively easy to cultivate and process. The industrial applications range from foodstuffs to the development of specialized polymers and medicines. This specimen will increase food from jobs by 2%. The Curator Survey. An extremely detailed survey of a specific system which was crafted by a curated detachment of giant arthropods. This is from the abandoned station anomaly. The highly precise instruments used in the study provide a layered analysis on all potential properties within the system. The attention to detail shown here implies a great passion for this type of work. This specimen will increase engineering research by +5. Super roots. Found in the forests of a tropical world, these naturally pulpy roots have been found to be highly nutritious. This comes from the Lush Planet event. With careful management, harvesting only a portion of their extensive networks allow the host plants to survive while supporting developing colonies. We have already begun experimenting with simple genetic modification that will allow the grafting of these roots into existing crops for an extra yield to the harvests. This specimen increases food from jobs by 2%. Acidic spores. The flora on this planet evolved a defensive mechanism over time in order to deter the dominant herbivore species of the planet. This comes from the lethal tropical wildlife anomaly. Its resultingly highly corrosive gas has rendered large swathes of the planet toxic and uninhabitable. A less potent version has since been synthesized into a form of effective pesticide. The specimen will also increase food from jobs by 2%. The Ancient Heat Sensor. Disguised within an asteroid, this sensor was used to generate galactic heat maps and transfer the data to a distant ancient empire. This is from the Target Practice anomaly, which is where they used ships and drove them into planets. This specimen is capable of tracking temperature variance within individual systems, as well as tracking the movement of spacecraft via infrared radiation. However, its primary purpose seems to be predicting and measuring solar storms and the formation of sunspots. This specimen increases engineering research by +5. The Ancient Mining Transmitter. A short-range transmitter used to mark a large deposit of precious metals. This is from the Ancient Survey Marker event. Despite its age, this transmitter's signal can be picked up on a wide variety of sensors and is easily traceable. Its continuing functionality is a testament to its robust engineering. This specimen will increase minerals from jobs by 2%. The asteroid fossils. Carbon dating has revealed that these aquatic fossils are several million years old. This comes from the asteroid fossils event. They are the mineralized remains of shelled aquatic invertebrates with a unique hollow tube that we speculate was used to anchor themselves to underwater thermal vents. This specimen will increase your minerals from jobs by 2%. The carnivorous megaflora. Discovered on a jungle planet, these predatory plants can swallow an adult human whole if caught unaware. This specimen comes from the Venus flytrap megaflora anomaly. This foliage has evolved to primarily attract flying creatures, after having rendered most of its native land-bound fauna extinct. Many specimens extend high into the canopy and pose as perches for organisms to land upon. This specimen increases your consumer goods by 2.5%. A castaway robot. A derelict humanoid machine found floating in deep space. This is from the Old Soul anomaly. A few blurry images were extracted from its deteriorated memory banks. A wide vista in a trinary star system, a triangular spaceship, and a landscape welded of machine scrap. Unfortunately, no specific coordinates could be extrapolated from its metadata. This specimen will increase your energy from jobs by 2%. Coprolite, an asteroid-sized piece of fossilized fecal matter from roughly 1 billion years ago. This is from the Coprolite asteroid. Genetic analysis suggests that an unknown spaceborne entity of significant size produced this impressive specimen. We have ascertained that this creature's diet mainly consisted of rare minerals and silicon-based organisms. This object currently holds the galactic record for the largest known single piece of excrement. This specimen will, amusingly, increase food from jobs by 2%. The flooded settlement mound. The remnants of a flooded structure constructed by unknown arthropods from an Arctic world. This is found from the Watery Grave event. As this civilization developed industry, the planet's polar ice caps began to melt. Sea levels rose rapidly, flooding their settlements and condemning the species to extinction within a matter of years. The tallest of their structures now barely rise halfway from the bottom of the sea. This specimen increases habitability by +1. The fossilized voidworm tooth. The wear patterns on this fossilized voidworm molar indicate that it lived to be more than 100 years old. This specimen can be acquired from the pool, which includes the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition, or by rolling minor artifacts. The tooth shows heavy wear and decay typical of a creature subsisting on a diet of asteroids and space debris. It is estimated that the typical voidworm will grow and shed over 3,000 teeth in the course of its lifetime. This specimen will increase food from jobs by 2%. The fractured planet. The remains of a planet that was intentionally demolished by its own inhabitants. This comes from the event known as mass extinction through the ages. Whatever situation drove them to make such a drastic decision has sadly been lost to time, but this specimen will increase monthly volatile motes by 5%. The Gargantua megalus. After undergoing sudden and dramatic mutation, these plants increased in size exponentially to envelop the surface of this jungle planet. This specimen can also be acquired through the mass extinction through the ages event. Filling the air with a deadly pollen, this species suffocated the planet and rendered the dominant sentient species completely extinct. The roots of these plants were large enough to carve deep fissures through the planet's mantle, siphoning molten rock onto the surface in some areas. This specimen will increase minerals from jobs by 2%. The giant eggshell. Shards of calcified eggshell found beneath the surface of this planet. This is from the Shot into the Ground event. Analysis of dried albium shows that the creature fed off an array of unstable isotopes during its incubation period. Simulations of the hatching process show that the radioactive creature emerged from the thick shell, fully formed, and used its hardened claws to pierce the egg through the most radioactively weakened point along its birth wall. Disturbing indeed. This specimen will decrease your space fauna cloning cost by 5%. The mana fruit. A sweet and pulpy fruit that provides nearly a day's worth of nutritional requirements for most organic sapient life. This is from the Nutritious Fruit event. A unique soil composition of its home planet's tropical forest have provided the perfect environment for its extensive proliferation. Colonists on the planet utilize it in nearly every culinary context, from casseroles to cobblers to cocktails. This specimen will increase food from jobs by 2%. Molten planetary slag. This sample was harvested from a planet in a peculiar orbit. The specimen also comes from the mass extinction through the ages event. Material analysis indicates that this planet was pulled into an extreme orbit by a transient space-time anomaly, with intense heat from the proximity of its star melting much of its once habitable planet mantle. A portion of the planet was chemically altered by the anomaly and no longer reacts to the changes in temperature. This specimen will increase engineering research by +5. The Orinthy teeth. The still-growing teeth of an Orinthy. This specimen comes from the Habitable World survey. Small rodent-like creatures, the Ornithy had carved world-spanning labyrinth burrows throughout the planet. Their natural teeth are small and hollow, but a partner species of fungus inhabited each individual tooth and formed a sharp, brittle fang for the Orinthy to use. This specimen will increase your engineering research by +5. Perfectly facketed carbon. While carbon in its crystalline form is not such of a rare find in our galaxy, this specimen is especially notable for its complete lack of any internal or external inclusions. This specimen can be sought from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition, or by rolling minor artifacts. Whoever was previously in possession of the item took the time to carve it in such a way to highlight its remarkable features. This specimen will increase your engineering research by +5. The Cenarian spikes. Tall spikes found on the back of a creature known as a Cenarian. This specimen comes from the Habitable World survey. Cenarians were large ambush predators, lying beneath their native sand dunes and raising deadly spikes whenever they detect movement on the surface above. Despite their large size, the bodies of the creatures were surprisingly fragile. Their thin, reticulated scales allowed them to glide silently under the sand, but can be pierced quite easily. It is speculated that this aids their reproductive processes. This specimen will increase your engineering research by +5. Striated sand. A jar of self-sorting sand. This also comes from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition, or by rolling minor artifacts. These tiny silicate particles seem to exhibit a low level of sentience, with similar minerals grouping with one another across random horizontal planes. Despite this ability, the sand does not possess any of the other primary characteristics of life. This specimen will increase minerals from jobs by 2%. The Tarblack shimmer, a sparkling veil-like membrane of a Tarblack. This specimen comes from the Habitable World survey event. The creature makes novel use of psionics to hunt and protect itself, inflicting a sense of overwhelming dread to immobilize prey and intimidate predators. The specimen is preserved in a jar of its native waters and has been rendered telepathically inert. The specimen increases your monthly consumer goods by 2%. The Adlorian pelts, luxurious furs harvested from the Adlorian species. This specimen also comes from the Habitable World survey. These flexible omnivores wrap themselves into tight balls and roll across the planet's snowy surface in large groups, akin to a living avalanche. This tactic is used for both hunting and migration. A pack of Adlorians is typically divided into two groups: hunters who carve a destructive path through the landscape, and gatherers who follow behind, stopping to collect flattened prey and uprooted plants. This specimen will increase your consumer goods by 2%. The Warning Monolith. A carved monolith left as a message by one of the last members of an extinct species. This comes from the Planetary Scars anomaly. It attempts to dissuade anyone who discovers the remains of this planet from seeking the ultimate weapon that led to the death of their race. It's quite melodramatic in tone, but this can be excused, given the circumstance. This specimen will also increase your consumer goods by 2%. And finally, the last of the common specimens, the Zolkor wings. chitinous wings taken from the lithivore species known as Zolkor. This final common specimen comes from the Habitable World Survey. These insectoid creatures consume vast quantities of minerals as the main portion of their diet. A single swarm is capable of tearing through a mountain in a matter of weeks. After digestion, the minerals reinforce the Zolkor's exoskeleton. As a consequence, their waste products frequently contain traces of quartz crystals and rare metals. This specimen will increase your alloys from jobs by 2%. And now we move on to the rare specimens. As before, we shall start with the aesthetic wonders, and we begin with the ammonia phytus. The levels of aqueous ammonia in the planet's tissue would be quite dangerous to most carbon-based life forms. This comes from the life signs event. The immediate atmosphere surrounding its containment renders most sapient organisms unconscious within a few seconds. How such a species could exist has sparked intrigue and debate among our greatest minds, and nefarious plans among others. This specimen will increase your trade value by 6%. The Ballad of the Sable Knight. The Sable Knight came to us on the eve of a tournament. This specimen is from the Knights of the Toxic God origin, specifically the event where a knight is sent to prevent other knights to seek revenge against the Wanderer and follow them into a wormhole. Clad in strange armour, they made quite a journey. They challenged our champion in duel just and fair. Combat began and sparks filled the air. Our champion's guard was strong as expected, but the challenger's armour, each blow it deflected. The challenger yielded, a loss without shame, and then returned to the wormhole from whence it came. The specimen provides +5 amenities. The Bejeweled Pet Collar. A necklace used to designate ownership over a small domesticated animal. This comes from an envoy event. This was initially used by an envoy in the event that their valued companion were to get lost. It has since been replaced with a more reliable embedded microchip. This temperamental creature could often be found disrupting their owner's workstation and would release a satisfied tonal flutter whenever said envoy touched its head with their hands. This specimen will increase ship fauna damage by 4%. The Black Needle Ceremonial Sword. This meticulously crafted weapon was carried by Silverquill, the founder of the Black Needle Pirates, and this specimen will come from the Treasure Hunters event chain. Commissioned with the profits of the criminal organization's first major windfall, this sword was created as a status symbol and served no practical fighting purpose. Made from a steel titanium alloy, the phrase "pierce the veil" is inscribed along its hilt. This specimen will increase trade value by 6%. Crimson Nimkips. A species of semi-sentient plants that collaborate in great numbers to achieve feats of strength that would otherwise be impossible for their size. This comes from the Nimkip event chain. When isolated from the safety of their groups, these creatures are often consumed by predators for their excellent nutritional value. With a docile and obedient nature, the Nimkips make for excellent pets. This one is kept alive and safe within an enclosure, imitating its natural habitat. Do not tap on the glass. The specimen provides +5 amenities. The Crystallized Cathalloid Eye. The eye of the cathalloid is able to withstand extreme pressure and temperatures. This is one of the specimens that can be rolled from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Tradition, or via minor artifact re-rolling. How this one has become so crystallized is unclear, but it does appear to be part of the natural processes of its molting cycle. This specimen will increase physics research by a flat +10. Encyclopedia Xenologica. A collection of xenological theses written by a primal rancher. This comes from the primal cooling origin. The body of research offers in-depth insight into behavioral patterns of spaceborne life, mating rituals, migratory routes, interspecies communication, and more. There is also a section on identifying individual specimens using unique physical and tonal recognition. This specimen will increase your vivarium's maximum capacity by +10. Gamma Bloom. One of the few surviving species from a planet exposed to a powerful gamma-ray burst. The natural lead content in the plant's vascular system paints its reproductive organs in pleasing shades of red and yellow. This comes from the gamma ray burst event. This plant has evolved the ability to depend on minor genetic mutations in order to reproduce asexually, which makes cultivating the flora a dangerous proposition. We have found mixing small amounts of cobalt-60 radionucleotides into its soil allows it to survive outside of its home planet. This specimen will increase your amenities by +5. Hot ice. Discovered in the situ of an extremely hot surface from a molten planet, this water yet existed in solid form due to the intense gravitational pressure exerted on it by the planet's core. This comes from the White Hell event. The specimen has been kept contained within a specially designed pressure vessel to allow for display as a curiosity. Were this vessel to be breached, the instantaneous flashing to steam would quickly transform the container into an explosive device. Thus, you should not touch it. This specimen will increase amenities by +5. The Index of Knowledge. An ancient mural carved into an immense rock peninsula. This comes from the Unidentified Object event chain. This specimen was used as an analog reference document for the collective knowledge of an ancient civilization that once dominated the galaxy, known as the Kha'lanka. Their unique scientific insight included the ability to harvest concentrated energy from sunspots and the development of personal field manipulation implants. This specimen will increase your physics research by +10. The Inet Trade Manifesto, an extensive and highly detailed list of exchange policies for commerce and the intergalactic network of equal trading. This comes from the Initian Traders precursor event chain. The standards of the Initian traders were extremely high, always looking for the best deal with the most respectable of partners. Thus, they usually traded with themselves as a consequence. This specimen will increase trade value by 6%. The Irasian Kinder Atlas, an Irasian information tool used to educate children about the empire that they were born into. This specimen comes from the Irasian precursor event chain. The specimen provides basic information about Irasian agriculture, social hierarchy, and primary exports. Irasian history is told in the form of heroic tales, including the conquering and subjugation of various client species. Cartoonish representations of each subject are depicted along with disparaging remarks. This specimen will increase stability by +3. The Kamandii Maglil Shah. This ornate yet practical sickle was wielded by the senior Kamandii warriors. This is from the First League precursor event chain. An insectoid society with a deeply set martial tradition, they quickly became the leaders of the First League Honor Guard. After each victory, a ceremony would take place where enemy commanders were ritually executed with this weapon. Their fluids were used to anoint the bravest of their soldiers. The specimen's blade, although well maintained, shows significant signs of wear. This specimen will increase planet stability by +3. The Megacorp's Hyper Guitar. This remains the string instrument used by the psionic metal group known as Megacorps. This comes from a Caravaneer event. This device was said to be forged within the shroud and was originally intended to be used as a sonic weapon. Wielded by performance front being Kel Azan, its music captured the minds of billions before being shattered, destroying an entire audience in a blaze of glory. The associated album has since been banned in most systems. This specimen will increase your amenities by +5. The Minimar Chandelier. This luxury specimen was found intact in the crashed MSI warship. This is from the Restored Flagship event chain, which can be acquired from a payback empire. Outside of military use, the ship was also used for first contact operations with MSI client nations. MSI used the promise of luxury and progress to swindle entire civilizations to becoming indentured servants, locking them into unethical contracts and threatening them with destruction if they did not comply. Enlightenment may not be free, but at MSI, it's always worth the cost. This specimen will increase your pop growth speed by 4%. The Namarian Vessel Heraldry. Found within the ships crafted by the Namarian nomads, these crests represent the various factions within the Pursuing Waters fleet. This specimen can be acquired from the Nomad Refugee event chain. The calm pools representing housing vessels where Namarians sleep, grow food, and carry out the majority of their domestic activities. The emblem of the Shadow Rapids marks ships designed for industrial and scientific use. Older mid-sized ships equipped with a variety of tools from everything from scavenging to scientific experimentation. And finally, the crest of the raging waters stands for the Namarian Navy, trained combatants piloting sturdy vessels that can withstand significant firepower, and dole it out just as well. This specimen increases your stability by +3. The Olfacto Drive. A cache of information encoded in the medium of scent. This is from the olfactory follow-up event chain. The data within is either a collection of interesting narratives or the meticulous recordings of various organic excretions in high detail. Replicating this olfactory data storage technique is feasible, but it offers zero practical utility outside of novelty alone. This specimen will increase your amenities by +5. The Organic Computer. A fossilized organic computer found within the ruins of a Bowal colony. This specimen comes from the Bowal origin event chain. Used to educate young saplings prior to hive integration, the device is a remarkable feat of bioengineering. Recovered files detail innovative eco-management techniques made possible only by this species' peculiar, unique biology. The worlds around them were not built, but cultivated. This specimen increases stability by +3. The Organic Machine Interface Sculpture. A commemorative statue in recognition of the service provided by the biopops during a geomagnetic solar storm. This comes from the Geostorm event. The organic population stepped in to support their mechanical servitors, carrying out the work on malfunctioning caretaker units. This piece was designed by artistically inclined organics and specialized welding drones. This specimen increases stability by +3. Programmable Puzzle Cube. Highly engineered device capable of registering complex patterns to create abstract puzzles. This is from the Target from Orbit event chain. This original piece was found within a vast artificial construct as a test of an explorer's intellect. The cube has since been replicated for consumer use, allowing individuals to program their own puzzles for one another, or simply safeguard their belongings. This specimen increases physics research by +10. Repurposed Cleaning Drone. This drone design was part of a planet-wide sanitation protocol that inadvertently rendered its creator's homeworld completely sterile. This is from one of the Astral Rifts, the Cleaning Drones one to be exact. The specimen is highly versatile and can perform complex aerial maneuvers within its system of multi-directional thrusters. The machine was reverse engineered and repurposed to identify and categorize alien flora and fauna, and subsequently has been mass-produced to assist with colonization efforts across the galaxy. As a precaution, all of its cleansing subroutines have been erased. This specimen will increase planetary build speed by a whopping 25%. The Retarax Hunting Trophies. A collection of hunting trophies harvested from a wide variety of sapient species. This is from the Huntress dig site. These were collected from the valley of Mac Viel, where the Retarax would hunt citizens from their many vassal states for sport. All remains have been preserved in immaculate condition, with each small plaque detailing the trophy's features. This specimen will increase space fauna cloning speed by 2%. The Spirit of the Unshackled. A sculpture made in commemoration of the formation of the Broken Shackles Empire. This specimen can be acquired from the Broken Shackles Origin event. Broken and free from the chains of slavery, their shared and troubled past unites them in creating a more promising future. Each link in the sculpture's chain has the name of a founding member engraved on it. This specimen increases stability by +3. The Mask of Transformation. This humanoid mask was found preserved in a magnificent crystal pillar. This specimen comes from the Mask of Transformation dig site. The mask hums with psionic power, and some who approach it feel a presence within their mind. The mask itself seems to be a conduit for the power of the planet's moon, with the potential to turn tides and transform planets with its strength alone. Why it was encased in crystal can only be speculated, but we are most certain it is safe enough for public display. This specimen increases trade value by 6%. The Sky Dragon. This celebratory statue was commissioned to represent the collaboration between our people and the Sky Dragon that has long orbited our homeworld. This is from the Sky Dragon origin, and you acquire it when the Happy Dragon wishes to start a family with you. Having deemed our society worthy, the creature pledged itself and its offspring in military support for exchange for the opportunity to raise its young in our space. It is said that these spaceborne creatures can wait for millennia to find suitable hosts for their young, and only ever choose one planet. This specimen will increase your Vivarium max capacity by +10. The Yut Crystal Skull. A crystal skull that the ancient Yut once believed to be a genuine alien artifact. This is from the Yut Precursor event chain. The origin of this fraudulent item was eventually debunked, but not before the eager Yut news media ran with the story and brought it fame. Many of those who discovered false artifacts such as this one became minor celebrities and media personalities, incentivizing others to do the same. This specimen will increase your trade value by 6%. The Nivlac Declaration of Friendship. This specimen is a letter of gratitude from the Nivlac community. This specimen comes from the Impossible Organism event. Evolving quickly, the Nivlac became capable of faster-than-light travel. Their first act on the galactic stage was to show appreciation to their gracious benefactors and guardians, committing to a diplomatic friendship. This specimen increases your unity by a flat +10. The Wormhole Anchor. The anchor point of a one-way wormhole device used to harvest dark matter from a black hole. This is from the Transient Gravitational Anomaly. Its construction is haphazard at best, built entirely from salvage and scrap from several civilizations. The science behind the device goes far beyond the engineering ability used to construct it, using an elegant technique for manipulating negative mass. This specimen increases society research by +10. The Unfinished Manifesto. An incomplete manifesto written by the leader of the Radical Cult. This specimen comes from the Radical Cult event chain, specifically when the flagship is boarded and captured. The style is reminiscent of ancient religious text, using old-fashioned vocabulary and syntax in an attempt to seem more legitimate. A key message preached into the text is pride in the face of defeat, encouraging followers to martyr themselves when faced with imminent capture. This specimen increases governing ethics attraction by 20%. The Alien Brain Scan. Archived neural patterns from a long-dead alien race found within a vault. This specimen comes from the Limbo event chain. The Forgotten Civilizations stored this data in the hope of transferring their consciousness to digital repositories and living on as immortals in the face of a planet-wide disaster. Many of the scans are accompanied with notes on individual personalities, including testimonies from those who knew them best. This specimen increases your Edict Fund by a flat 10. The Ancient Riftsphere. An ancient spacefaring vessel that travelled through an astral rift and crash-landed. This specimen comes from the Riftwalker origin event chain. Buried deep beneath the planet's surface for centuries, this hastily assembled spherical ship is what brought the forefathers of our people to this galaxy. Much of its material has since been scavenged for parts, but its core structure remains intact. This specimen increases your sublight speed by 8%. The Ancient Satellite. A derelict satellite offered as a gift by the ancient mechanical drones. This specimen comes from the helpful Drones event chain. Its databank is decayed and corrupted in many places, but census records and birth registries are intact. The information on population behaviour across the planet provided information on how this colony could grow sustainably. Its partial functionality after years of decay is a testament to its sturdy construction. This specimen increases ship hull points by 7%. The Arm Dealer's Triggerless Gun. This weapon was designed during the short-lived second reign of the arms broker on Chaw's Compass. The specimen can be acquired from the loot boxes that the Caravanners will sell you. At that time, the Caravanners' Citadel was closer to a weapons trading forum than a casino, with blasters smithed in-house and home to a variety of resident dealers. At the time, weapons were presented to prospective buyers with the triggers removed in an attempt to discourage incidents of petty theft. This specimen increases ships' weapon damage by 3%. The Doomsday Scroll. Ancient spiritual scripture discovered in the heart of a molten maze. This comes from the ebb and flow event. These scrolls describe a fearsome being, the arch-enemy, the shadow that devours all, and its hunger for destruction. The native belief system dictated that the only path to salvation from this monster was to prevent it from reaping one's soul, and so the population conducted a mass ritual suicide. This specimen increases unity by 5%. The Exobiology Compendium, a comprehensive research paper on the wonders of alien life throughout various systems in the galaxy. This comes from the Specimen Secured event. The paper contains detailed and extensive field research from several planets, forever designing known possible conditions where life can be discovered within the galaxy. It ends with the phrase, "Life as we know it will never be the same." This specimen increases leader experience gain by 10%. The first human astronaut, a national hero of the human species. This comes from the Corpse in Space event, the first of their kind to break the oppressive bonds of their home planet's gravity well and venture into a new frontier. This astronaut was placed in a stripped-down shuttle for burial. The funeral vessel was found drifting in space and has been preserved as a cultural artifact. This specimen increases unity by 5%. The Enetian Planetary Model Manual, a user manual written by the Enetian traders on how to operate and maintain their planetary system model. The Enetians use this complex system to calculate the most effective trading routes between neighbouring planets. The model also includes the ability to track deals as they're being made for truly the most cutthroat of merchants. This specimen increases sublight speed by 8%. The Interdimensional Treaty, a landmark document celebrating an interdimensional relationship cultivated with a parallel version of oneself. This comes from the Strange Station event. The ability to review one's alternate decisions from an outside perspective proves useful in objectively analysing one's own policy, a truly unique scientific opportunity. This specimen increases unity by a flat +10. Intergalactic Projectile, mass driver ammunition fired millions of years ago from a neighbouring galaxy. This specimen comes from the Glancing Hit event. These non-explosive projectiles travelled many light years, only to collide with one of our research vessels. Despite their age, the complexity of the ammunition's durable design implies that its curators had reached an advanced age of technological supremacy. And it also goes to show why Sir Isaac Newton is the deadliest son of a bitch in space. This specimen increases ship weapons damage by 3%. Landia's Arm, a bizarre specimen recovered from the Patriotic Institute of Benevolence. The specimen comes from the Adakkaria precursor event chain. Inside the office of the Habitat's Overseer hung a mummified tentacle arm that once belonged to the Overseer himself, still proudly displayed on an elaborately decorated plaque after all these years. Why Landia chose to leave his limb behind is a question that will never be answered. Perhaps this was not the only thing the Institute's demise cost him. This specimen will increase society research by a flat +10. The Rainaissance cloning vat, a cloning vat used by the now extinct Rainaissance consciousness. This specimen comes from the Rainaissance event. Once a major galactic power, the hive-minded Rainaissance were crippled by a horrific infectious disease spread by an adversary. Unable to cure the disease in sufficient time, they stored clones in vats capable of an almost indefinite stasis, with the goal of being a living archive of their culture's history if they were to survive. This specimen increases leader experience by 10%. The Manifesti Social Commemoratory Piece, a provocative document from the Manifesti movement. The specimen comes from the Manifesti event chain. The document is meant to challenge one's perception of itself in relation to the higher social caste. The audience was encouraged to manipulate the images of themselves, as well as create distorted collages of popular political figures. As a counter-culture art collective, the Manifesti sought to challenge what they perceived to be an oppressive establishment. This piece has inspired many other artists to publish their own critical works. This specimen will give you a flat society research increase of 10. The Memories of Elec, data pulled from the mind of Elec Narath Kerrick. This specimen comes from the Satana dig site. A devoted follower of Satana, Elec was frozen in suspended animation for hundreds of millions of years. Her memory shifted between her pure love of Satana and the violence and strife from the conflicts with the followers of Zarqualan. It was clear that she had seen many vile atrocities, but her faith gave her the strength to carry on. All that remained of her decayed mind was a singular image. This specimen decreases leader upkeep by 10%. Planet Pusher. These massive propulsion devices, when connected in series, are theoretically capable of influencing a small planet's orbit. This comes from the Abandoned Thrusters event chain. The intended mounting system for the thrusting arrays were designed to push the planet without affecting its rotation. The main logistical concern with this type of engine technology would be the inordinate quantity of fuel used to sustain its use. It would take the coordination of an entire civilization to maintain its operation. The specimen increases your fleet command limit by +5. The primitive Mega-Electromagnet. A portion of a powerful directional electromagnet, the specimen comes from the Moon Bump event. Ancient inhabitants foolishly used this device to bring their planet's moon closer in order to more easily harvest its valuable metal. The approach was too effective, bringing the metal moon crashing into their planet's surface and exterminating every inhabitant in the resulting impact. The specimen was only a small fraction of what could be recovered from the planet's spinning machine. This specimen increases bombardment damage by 10%. The Scientific Treatise of Tesla. The Philosophical Musings of Telasa, Teller of Tales. This comes from the event Cold Hard Potential. She explores a variety of rhetorical topics as well as the core principles of the scientific method. Inside these texts, the very concept of objective truth is challenged and critical thinking is encouraged. The specimen increases leader experience gain by 10%. The Secrets of the Black Crown. A detailed schematic of the intergalactic gateway, known as the Black Crown. This specimen is acquired from the Gateway Origin event chain. The data was transmitted as a final gift from the Gateway's enigmatic creators as a way to preserve their incredible technology. Entrusted to them, the power and majesty of their gateway was unmatched to this day. This specimen increases society research by +10. Terraforming machinery. Tiny devices used as part of an ancient form of terraforming technology. This comes from the Terraforming Complex event. These miniature machines were designed to spread out across the planet's surface and convert the existing organic and mineral matter to suit a more desirable climate. Teams of the robots were used to manipulate weather patterns with biomes and replicate new plants and animals to manage the newly crafted ecosystems. The specimen increases society research by a flat +10. The Epic of Zarqualan. The holy text of Zarqualan, the guardian of Moz-Tarb, the prophet of Zeva. The specimen comes from one of the Satana dig sites. Once a follower of Satana, he soon discovered that her promised salvation was a lie. After many struggles, Zarqualan was able to ascend to the spiritual realm, where he pleaded with the animator of clay to help him defeat Satana. Finally, after years of devoted prayer, the animator bequeathed to him a mighty chain to bind Satana's mind. But Zarqualan was warned the chain could not contain her power forever. She would return, and we must be ready for her. The specimen increases your unity by 5%. Tiny ancient sarcophagus. The burial chamber of an ancient spiritual leader from millions of years ago. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator's Civic, the Tradition Tree, or by rolling minor artifacts. It measures only 10 centimeters in length, though most of its remains are now dust. A tiny mask of pure gold remains intact, having never oxidized. This specimen increases your society research by a flat +10. The Voltum Religious Pamphlet. Distributed by Voltum missionaries, this pamphlet attempts to expose virtual reality devices as the greatest sin. The specimen can be acquired from the Voltum Precursor event chain. It refers to the Great Lie as a key concept, painting any form of immersive escapism, akin to a will to destroy one's own reality. The specimen increases governing ethics attraction by 20%. The Zeroni War Banners. These are the recovered banners of the two factions involved in the Zeroni Civil War. The specimen comes from the Zeroni Origin event chain. The purple flag represents the Divine, whose quest for omnipotence placed the galaxy at risk. The blue flag represents the Saviors, a faction strongly against draining the universe of its power to fuel what they saw as selfish desire. These lines were once drawn in philosophical debate, but it was not long before the dispute became the catalyst for a devastating conflict. This specimen will increase leader experience by 10%. Ancient nanites. These highly versatile nanites were discovered on this newly terraformed planet, having been delivered there thousands of years ago by a forgotten civilization. This is from the Paravis terraforming event. Lacking crucial security features, there was clearly no concern that others might come upon these devices and repurpose them. Having used them to terraform the planet into a more habitable environment, the owner of the planet has now taken ownership of the swarm, though the methods behind their original construction remain a mystery. This specimen increases planet habitability by 2%. Crystal nest fragments. Found inside of a rogue asteroid, a spacefaring creature compounded these crystals using immense pressure in order to create a shelter. The specimen comes from the Crystal Being Living in an Asteroid event. From traces found within their composition, it is believed that the source of the organism consumes highly reactive minerals to extract energy from their unstable chemical bonds, leaving behind an inert but durable crystal that can focus light to a fine point. The specimen increases energy credits from jobs by 4%. Dathnak gas. A collection of peculiar gases received from the Dathnak gaseous organisms. The specimen comes from the Dathnak transmission event chain. The container was offered to us for aiding the Dathnak migration to a new planet. Mass spectromic analysis reveals that it contains a perfectly equal number of atoms to a variety of noble gases and elements. We're fairly certain there are no living organisms inside. The specimen increases monthly gases output by 10%. The dissected brain slug. This is the remains of the symbiotic brain slug species, and the specimen is acquired from the brain slug event chain. Analysis shows that it could function as an additional complex brain for its host in exchange for nourishment and protection. The partnership requires an explicit willingness from the host, otherwise the neural link cannot be established properly. It is said to produce a pleasing tickling sensation when integrating into a nervous system. The specimen will increase your engineering research by a flat +10. Dimensional endothelial lining. Peculiar gelatinous material harvested from a pulsating tunnel system within an astral rift. This comes from the Fluid Astral Rift event. As a lining with an unknown organism, this material allows for frictionless movement between massive vascular systems and the materials transported within. The specimen will increase energy from jobs by 4%. Enormous scrambled albumen. The insides of this creature, which was later discovered to be a gigantic egg. This comes from the Cracking the Egg Galactic Omelette event. Having cracked the egg open, the planet was flooded with this peculiar mineral-rich fluid. Synthesizing the substance and integrating it into our organic food supply is likely to improve overall nutrition levels. This specimen will increase food from jobs by 4%. The First League Crew Manifest. A military roster of crew members from the ancient civilization known as the First League. The specimen comes from the First League Precursors event chain. As part of their Grand Navy, this 2-million-year-old cruiser operated under a teamwork of 12 unique species. The document was signed by the first officer, Scruter, of the Mega-Yan, and appears to have been a routine general quarters muster. This specimen will increase alloys from jobs by 4%. The fossilized megastomach. Digestive glands taken from a planet-spanning worm-like creature. This comes from the Subterranean Hollows event chain. Remarkably, an entire civilization developed within the organism's gut before being fully digested. These glands bear the marks of weapon strikes from the Great War, and these people waged fruitlessly against their host. The gargantuan worm later died of natural causes within its network of burrows. This specimen increases engineering research by a flat +10. The High Geode. This is a prized, crystallized geode. This specimen comes from the Possible Inhabitants event chain. A society of pre-sapient burrowers long used the perceived quality of minerals unearthed to represent their status within society. Once prominently displayed in their largest habitat, this now beautiful rock functions as a symbol of collaboration. This specimen increases minerals from jobs output by 4%. The Impossible Object. An impossible object left by extra-dimensional visitors after the departure of their fabricated labyrinth. This specimen comes from the Impossible Labyrinth event chain. The trials faced during the exploration of the maze were seemingly part of the visitors' experimentation and observation processes. The motives of these beings remain unknown, but their technological capability must be far beyond any of those in our dimension. This specimen increases engineering research by +10. The Memorial Stone. This is a commemorative stone created in memoriam of a tragic accident. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator's Civic, the Tradition Tree, or by rolling minor artifacts. Over-eager mining operations on the station known as Cenotaph caused the asteroid it was mounted on to collapse inward. The station split apart, inflicting a vast number of casualties among the miners. The fragment of the asteroid was kept, with Cenotaph carved onto it in memory of lives lost. This specimen increases engineering research by a flat 10. Metallic snow. This compound of heavy metals is a major component of the weather patterns here. This specimen comes from the Heavy Metal Forest event. Flowing from molten rivers into a vast metallic sea, it would then evaporate into the corrosive atmosphere. Once cooled, it would condense and rain back down onto the scorched surface. It is not recommended to visit this planet in its current state. This specimen will increase alloys from jobs by 4%. Miniature moon dust, the remains of a moon from within a hyperdense and miniaturized system discovered beyond an astral rift. This specimen comes from the astral rift designated Tiny Planet. The dust that was retrieved here behaves oddly inside of our dimension. Its hyper-concentrated particles continuously expand, requiring the specimen to be transferred to an increasingly larger container over time. This specimen increases minerals from jobs by 4%. The Oasius construction material. These massive bones were used as a material resource. This specimen comes from the City of Bones dig site. A species of reptile with a genetic soft tissue ossification was bred extensively to be harvested for building supplies. Analysis shows that the reptile had a variety of other genetic deficiencies, such as unwebbed feet, potentially due to inbreeding. The majority of the creatures were humanely euthanized before harvesting took place. This specimen will increase your engineering research by a flat +10. The radiated remains. The remains of a specimen that carried out ritualistic ceremonies involving powerful radioactive mutagens. The specimen can be acquired from the Mutation VATS event. Each mutation was a sacred event, interpreted as a manifestation of the individual's destiny. Over time, the procedure destabilized the genetic structure of the species and weakened their immune system, making the population extremely vulnerable to disease. This specimen will increase terraforming speed by 10%. The reactive rock. This unstable mineral has no commercial or industrial use in its current state. The specimen comes from the Poison-Coated event, and appears to be linked to an empire irradiating the rock for fun and profit. However, due to its uniquely reactive properties, it is possible to trigger a complete metosonic change under specific conditions. The specimen is encased in a lead-infused viewing window that limits radioactive and electrical bombardment. This specimen increases minerals from jobs by 4%. The Resonant Diffusion Crystal. This crystal is able to absorb and resonate any frequency of solar radiation, creating a kaleidoscopic display in the process. This specimen can be acquired from the Colour of Science event, also known as the Kaleidoscope. Not only is this a visual marvel, but it could also aid in the development of energy-based weapons or tools. The gem has sparked great interest within the galactic jewelry industry. This specimen will increase rare crystal output by 10%. The Symbiotic Fruit. This is a cluster of intelligent fungus from another dimension, and the specimen can be acquired from the Garden Astral Rift. This fruit maintains a symbiotic relationship with a species of highly dangerous, omnivorous plants. Each colony of fungus functions as the thought center for the organism pair, orchestrating its complex patterns of defensive behavior. This specimen will increase food from jobs by 4%. Terraforming Case Study. A scale model of a successful terraforming project representing a near-perfect recreation of the event. This specimen is one of several that can be acquired from terraforming planets. There are another 2 terraforming specimens, Case Study Dry and Terraforming Records. These share similar descriptions. The planet is now populated by identical fauna down to a microscopic level, and even the most specific cross-biome ecosystems behave just as they should. All three of these specimens will increase planet habitability by 2%. And finally, the last of the rare specimens, Zone A, Sedative. This is a scoop of Earth taken from the area designated as Zone A, and the specimen can be acquired from the Zone event. The 169 square kilometre division of land harbours abandoned gadgets and technology from previous alien visitors of unknown origins. Some of these devices are extremely dangerous, but the very soil itself is laced with a chemical sedative that would have allowed researchers to handle them with little stress. Whatever operation was undertaken here has been long forgotten. This specimen will increase terraforming speed by 10%. We now move on to the epic specimens, and we begin with the ageless Miracle Cream, the first container of a revolutionary cosmetic known to provide long-lasting biological rejuvenation. This specimen can be acquired from the Science Nexus Fountain of Youth event. It has a multitude of uses, allowing consumers from any and every organic species to maintain a youthful glow. Baseless rumours regarding disfiguring side effects and illegally harvested ingredients still circulate, but this misinformation has not hampered the cosmetic's incredible commercial success. This specimen will increase trade output by 10%. The amoeba flagella gland, a secondary reproductive organ from a space amoeba. This specimen can be acquired if you perform an autopsy on a space amoeba. The specimen produces independent organisms known as flagella, aggressive spawn that swarm and overwhelm prey as the amoeba hunts for food. The flagella grow quickly, but genetic instabilities leave them unable to fully mature. In order to produce a true offspring, space amoeba inject a specialized enzyme into the flagella which triggers rapid metamorphosis. The selection process for this reproduction method is unknown. This specimen increases space fauna sublight speed by 10%. The black hole chromatic anomaly. This is a seemingly fantastical image captured from within a star. This specimen comes from the Energetic Spectra event. Due to the chemical composition of a specific black hole's accretion disk, this system's black hole gained a chronomic aberration, creating a kaleidoscopic light effect across local space, a truly unique spectacle in deep space. This specimen increases sensor range by +1. The crystalline core, a nerve cluster taken from a crystalline entity. This specimen can be acquired if one conducts an autopsy on crystalline entities. The crystal hums at a constant frequency regardless of temperature. Spurs of new crystal grow from this central mass in mineral-rich surroundings, their structures altering in a reaction to environmental stimuli. Based on this behaviour, we can determine that individual entities become distinct from one another due to two factors. This specimen will increase space fauna ship growth rate by 10%. The cathalloid digestive acid, radioactive fluids harvested from a cathalloid. This specimen can be acquired if one conducts an autopsy on a cathalloid. Cathalloids rely on the nuclear decay of cobalt-60 isotopes to digest its prey, their stomach acid itself being relatively mild. As such, cathalloid digestion can be a lengthy process. Once the cells of their prey have been weakened by radiation, the acid is able to break down and extract the nutrients from even the most unlikely of sources. This specimen increases space fauna ship damage by 5%. Ethereal dust, the only trace of the head researcher left on the hijacked science ship found in a remote star system. This specimen comes from the Wanderlust event chain. Analysis of the astral material is mostly inconclusive, but trace elements of the researcher's DNA spontaneously appears from time to time, before quickly decaying. All evidence suggests that the scientist crossed from our dimension to another. Using a temporarily stable rift in spacetime, they refer to as the window. We may never know if they survived. This specimen increases your physics research by a flat +20. The extra-dimensional ceramic pot. This specimen is quite literally a ceramic pot that we found orbiting a star, and it comes from the Improbable Teapot event. It exists only as a shadow of another four-dimensional object from a higher dimension. Within our plane of existence, this modest container is indestructible and defies all logic. It puts our very reality into perspective. The specimen will increase physics research by a flat +20. The Galactic Megadrive. surveillance data collected from across the galaxy for the past 1.2 billion years. This specimen comes from the Planetary supercomputer anomaly. The level of data compression used is so advanced that we have no way of accessing it without technology that's far beyond our understanding. The construction of the storage technology itself still provides remarkable insights in terms of digital hardware development. This specimen will increase your physics research by a flat 20. The heart of the pulsar. Once worn by 5 active heads of state, this precious jewel was found abandoned in a luxury pleasure station. This comes from the Star Petal event. Material analysis shows us that it was carved from carbon ejected from a supernova. Perhaps it was meant to metaphorically represent a hidden beauty within death, even on a celestial scale. The specimen will increase trade by 10%. The invasive exofungus. Parasitical fungus growth discovered on this planet. The specimen comes from the exofungus event chain. This mycelial organism has evolved to extract nutrients from any living source, preserving its host for as long as possible with no regard for pain or discomfort. Highly resistant to heat and cold, it likely spread to this planet via a passing spacecraft. Classified as a priority alpha biohazard, its planet of origin remains unknown. This specimen increases physics research by a flat plus 20. The last copy of The Prince. A fairly pedestrian piece of literature, but nevertheless revered by an alien species that believed it had been lost forever in a raid. The specimen can be acquired from the Prince event chain. The book expounds a utilitarian if cruel philosophy, encouraging those in power to make sacrifice in exchange for glory. As the last remaining copy, it has taken on a new life as a collector's item. This specimen increases amenity output by plus 7. Living Snow Sculpture. A sculpture made of living snow, and the specimen comes from the Living Snow event chain. Possessing some form of primitive consciousness, the material has been granted a neural reserve. It routinely changes form, though when this occurs it can be unpredictable. The specimen increases your physics research by a flat plus 20. The mutated Fomungus. An enhanced version of Fomungus, these mycelial emitters can now collect and transmit data at a far higher rate, allowing for more detailed surveillance reports. This specimen can be acquired from the Mushroom Network event. The increased capacity has caused the individual mushrooms to grow in size and create a new cluster formation that somewhat resembles a radio broadcast antenna. This specimen will increase sensor range by a flat plus 1. The Namarian Colonist Standard. This flag marks the settlement of the new nomad colony, and it was graciously gifted to them. This specimen can be acquired from the Nomad Refugee event. Nomads who grew tired of their iterant lifestyle settled here, returning to the ways of their ancestors. No doubt this decision weighed heavily in the minds of the colonists as they left behind their ships that had once housed their people for generations. This specimen increases stability by plus 4. The Sandbellamy Arms Basket. A bowl carried by members of Sandbellamy nomads to accept charity. The specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. These travellers committed a form of ethical piracy after their temple was destroyed by an expanding corporate empire. They stole from wealthy megacorporations and used their earnings to fund refugee outposts. They then survived entirely off the donations received from refugees that they supported. The specimen increases trade by 10%. The Space Shanty. The transcribed accompaniment to a sea shanty found aboard a ship designed to sail along solar winds. The specimen can be acquired from the Aquatic Space Shanty, or the Message in the Bottle event chain. With so many references to storms and weather, it can be guessed that the species who wrote this music came from deep-set nautical traditions on their home planet. It remains unclear as to why this song is designed to repeat in its entirety for intervals of almost 10 hours. The specimen increases amenities by plus 7. The Statue of Smeagib. A statue of Smeagib, the hive-minded companion of Captain Ness. The specimen can be acquired from the Treasure Hunter event chain. Smeagib was a loyal servant, functioning as the legendary pirate's entire crew and boarding party in the latter stages of her career. This reconstructed statue was all that remained after the Black Needle's attack on their small settlement. The specimen will increase stability by plus 4. The Final Sacrifice. an image of the final moment of the Zeroni Civil War, extrapolated from excavated data crystals. This specimen can be acquired from the Zeroni Precursor event chain. A lone savior harnessed the psionic power of their entire species to exterminate the rival faction known as the Divine, preventing them from potentially consuming their entire universe. All that now remains of this ascended species are small deposits of the resource that we know as Zero. This specimen will increase trade by 10%. The Tianqi radioactive sac, a small porous organ found within the membranes of a Tianqi. The specimen can be acquired should you perform an autopsy on a Tianqi. This specimen's discovery revealed that Tianqi consume irradiated water molecules alongside planetary gases as an additional source of nutrition. Once full, this sac becomes a radioactive heat source for the creatures in the depths of space. This specimen will increase space fauna ship hull strength by 10%. The tricorn of Osan, a tri-tipped hat made popular by a forgotten pirate republic. The specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. Osan was a small planet populated by a civilization that unknowingly provided refuge to a wanted pirate fleet, the Boer Brawlers. Lying low from the galactic authorities, the Brawlers built a small textile mill to fund their time in hiding, using native fibrous plants to create luxurious fabrics and clothing. The Brawlers gradually became mercantile nomads, known for their oddly intimidating sales representatives. The specimen will increase trade by 10%. The Vault of Polaris, an exhaustive collection of the native plants and bacteria of Polaris. The specimen comes from the Seed Vault event. The container's inscription reveals that the vault was created to preserve the species that may not survive the predicted global warming after the melting of its permafrost. The planet was once covered in thick snow with a cold climate, but now all that remains is a sole iceberg. The foresight of its creators allows us to place their efforts on display for all to study. The specimen increases your vivarium capacity by 15. The Veil of Selene, a stimulating and intoxicating mask. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by rolling minor artifacts. The veil is imbued with unique sensory properties that allow it to gently overwhelm visual, olfactory, and acoustic biological receptors. It's believed that the headwear was worn to disorient those who encountered it and make them more susceptible to suggestion. It is rumoured that the original owner had some amount of psionic capability. The specimen will increase your immunities by 7. The Void Worm Amniotics, a gelatinous substance found at the centre of a void worm troika. The specimen can be acquired if one performs an autopsy on void worms. This feccacious slime forms a protective barrier between the three organisms, allowing for the exchange of cells for reproductive and communicative purposes. Hormones produced from the bombardment of the planet are stored here, allowing these creatures to safely release their gametes and produce offspring. This specimen will increase ship fauna cloning speed by 5%. The Voltum VR video game, the digital interface used in a multi-user virtual reality game once played by billions of Voltum individuals from a bygone era. This specimen can be found from the Voltum Precursor event. Uniquely attuned to their biology, the controls consist of an array of thousands of vibrational receptors capable of dictating extremely subtle movements. This specimen will increase immunities by +7. The Yut Audio Console. This module once controlled an enormous audio surveillance array that was designed by the Yut. This specimen can be acquired from the Yut Precursor. This technology was developed to facilitate the Yut search for extraterrestrial life, hoping to pick up foreign transmissions from the systems array. This specimen will increase your immunities by +7. The Advisor Core, the only part left intact after disassembling a complex advisor drone found within an astral rift. This specimen comes from the astral rift known as the Advisor. The core contains an incredible amount of trivial information, but the complexity of its software architecture has inspired a wave of innovation in our computer science research efforts. This specimen increases physics research by a flat +20. The Art of the Hunt, Field Guide to Spaceborne Fauna, written by a primal hunter. The specimen comes from the Bone Ship event. The specimen explains the art of the hunt by way of proverbs and primal philosophies. Detailed insights into the feeding and migration patterns of spaceborne creatures are provided within, and the text offers practical instructions on how to bypass a creature's natural defences, revealing multiple weak points that can be exploited. The specimen increases damage to space fauna by 7%. The Black Needle Ledger. The ledger recounts every deal brokered by the Black Needle pirates over thousands of years in our galaxy. The specimen comes from the Treasure Hunter's Origin event chain. Every transaction, ransom and bribe is dated and categorized in a neat script. As written history of intergalactic illicit dealings, it offers unparalleled insight into the economic trends of the black market over time. This specimen increases your edict fund by +15. The Confessions of the Benefactors. A recording device containing hard truths about the ancient civilization known as the Benefactors. This specimen comes from the On the Shoulders of Giant origin. In the face of an unknown galactic threat, they use their advanced technology to carry out a mind wipe, transforming an industrious civilization into a swarm of harmless simpletons. This was done in the belief that the galactic menace would not waste munitions or time on such a lowly society. In the end, this questionable measure is what likely allowed the civilization to thrive as it does now, standing on the shoulders of giants. This specimen increases edict fund by +15. The Derelict Cybrex Warform. The remains of a Cybrex Warform destroyed in battle against its own kind. This specimen comes from the Cybrex Precursor event chain. The cause of the infighting was unknown, so evenly matched with the machines, precisely targeted blows dealt to identical critical systems before emergency self-detonation was triggered. A rare example of a true stalemate in warfare. The specimen increases ship hull points by 10%. The Drone Ship Core. Remnants of the core from a high-tech drone ship that has since self-destructed. This specimen can only be acquired if one attempts to fight and destroy Warform S875B. A poor choice, if I must say so myself. This vessel was initially discovered corroding the acidic atmosphere of a toxic planet. The onboard AI was operating independently, but has since been erased as part of its self-termination protocol. Engineers were unable to recover any amount of lost data, so its mission remains a mystery. This specimen will increase your society research by a flat +20. The Favorian Mass Driver Blueprints. A gift from the Favorians. This specimen comes from the Fear of the Dark origin event chain. The Favorium's extermination policies extended to all known alien life by means of launching enormous tungsten rounds that almost destroyed our own planet. After being spared, they shared their blueprints for their massive tungsten launchers under the agreement that the cruel weapons are never constructed again. This specimen increases ship weapons damage by 5%. The Figurehead of the Hyacinth. The recovered ornamental figurehead from the doomed voyage of the Hyacinth Ark ship. This specimen can only be acquired from playing as the Commonwealth of Man and boarding the Hyacinth. After a serious reactor malfunction, the Ark ship was left without power and stranded in the depths of space. Colonists fought over dwindling resources before eventually starving to death. The figurehead bears several inspirational inscriptions and symbols of hope. This specimen increases ship hull points by 10%. The Flag of the Jarrow Lijo. Jarrow Lijo was the title given to the leader of the Despot Bandits, a pirate group that lasted for hundreds of generations. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. Despite their rambunctious and violent nature, the Jarrow Lijo was elected democratically by the crew and would serve until death or retirement. The storied history of the Despot Bandits ended rather abruptly when their entire fleet was destroyed in the Battle of Wada after a ransom exchange went sour. This specimen increases leader experience gain by 15%. The Head of the Beast. The remains of a dangerous mutant that once terrorized a colony. The specimen comes from the Mutant Stalker event. This beast was created by malfunctioning terraforming nanites that had been left behind by an unknown civilization. As intelligent as it was horrific, this creature sheltered in a nest constructed of hundreds of severed body parts. It was thoughtful enough to keep its extra food as prisoners storing them for later consumption. Were it not for the intervention of military forces, this organism would have continued to have thrived on its homeworld as the new type of super predator. The specimen decreases leader upkeep by 15%. The Alani Archives, a bank of data crystals detailing the history and demise of the Alani. This specimen comes from the Library event. This secluded civilization forewent all material interests in favour of the pursuit of knowledge, to the point that they neglected to even procreate. Faced with a population crisis, they reached for technological immortality, but found only further peril. Eventually, the last of the inhabitants left to form a new order in pursuit of preserving the knowledge, leaving their homeworld to rot. This specimen increases society research by a flat +20. The last fragment of Feather. A piece of the destroyed planet of Feather. This specimen can be acquired from the Fear of the Dark origin. The Favorians' extermination policies extended to all known alien life by means of launching enormous tungsten rounds that almost destroyed a planet in its entirety. Now they themselves have fallen, wiping out in an instant by those very beings they sought to erase. This specimen increases bombardment damage by 15%. The Medal for Services to Diplomacy, a token of appreciation offered by the Galactic Council. This specimen is acquired from an envoy event to the Galactic community. A token of appreciation offered by the Galactic Council, the inscription on its reverse side reads, "As the recipient of this award, the Diplomatic Corps of Earth has shown their professionalism and ability to represent their leaders effectively. They are a true asset to the Galcom." This specimen increases Edict Fund by a flat +15. The Memorial for Bubbles. After years of loyal service, Bubbles has passed away, leaving an amoeba-sized hole in our galaxy that cannot be filled. This specimen is acquired from discovering that a scientist becomes depressed if Bubbles dies. Not only was Bubbles a loyal defender, but they were a shining example of what is possible when the best of the Commonwealth values are brought to light. They are gone but not forgotten. This specimen increases unity by a flat +20. The Memorial to our homeworld. This is all that remains of our doomed Doomsday homeworld. The specimen can be acquired from the Doomsday origin. Our home tragically tore itself apart. This final memorial highlights the strength of our people and our will to adapt and overcome even in the most challenging circumstances. The specimen increases unity by 7%. A piece of the Invocator, a fragment of the destroyed device once known as the Tempest Invocator. The specimen comes from the Adakkaria precursor event chain. Despite being only a shattered piece, it pulses with malevolent psionic energy. It is contained here in a shielded environment to allow for safe observation. The specimen increases society by a flat +20. The remains of a robot. The remains of a native robot after the settling of this planet. The specimen can be acquired from the Missing Lonely Bot event. The last remaining custodian of an ancient factory, it saved a group of colonists trapped inside derelict ruins. Its iconic dance moves and quirky mannerisms are being played in a digital display as part of the exhibit. The specimen increases unity by 7%. Soraya's Guilt. The recorded memories of Soraya, the lead developer of the Memorax subconscious system. The specimen comes from one of my personal favourite events, the Church of the Endless Expanse, or the Memorax event. Soraya was tasked with removing collective memories to suit the planet's leadership, but a malfunction eventually wiped the population minds clean. Unable to recover their memories, Soraya removed the habitat's life support and left the station to perish. Each of these devices are incredibly dense with raw computational power and are an achievement unto themselves. The specimen increases leader experience gain by 15%. The Shalarian Data Core, a terraforming database found amongst the ruins of the Shalarian Utopia. This specimen can be acquired from the Shalash dig site. Exterminated by the fanatic xenophobe Fallen Empire, the Shalarians created a climate management system using 6 equidistant moons. Before their untimely demise, the Shalarians had planned to terraform uninhabited planets in order to house and support refugee populations. This specimen increases society research by a flat +20. The Sulubast Control Column, the directional lever from a sublight spacecraft involved in a legendary accident. The specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator's Civic, the Archivism tradition, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. The Sulabaster passenger ship was transporting civilizations between two colonies of the Odlian Kingdom when a solar flare caused a critical malfunction in the vessel's engines that would guarantee disaster. Against all odds, the pilot managed to safely land the vessel on a passing asteroid by matching velocities and using manual controls. The Sul Blaster was subsequently decommissioned and mounted for public display. The specimen increases society research by a flat +20. The Last General's Badge, a badge from the military uniform of a recovered Initian Trader General. The specimen can be acquired from the Initian Trader's precursor event chain. Known to be a true paragon of egalitarian values, he was selected to run the desperate mission to create a non-polluting storm manipulator. It was his idea to leave a final message for future explorers in the hopes to pass on the lesson of the unfortunate fate of his people. The specimen can increase leader experience gain by 15%. The Underworld Cantina sign, still functioning digital signage from an illicit cantina used by smugglers some 2 million years ago. The specimen can be acquired from the First League precursor event chain. Found within a hollowed out asteroid, this establishment would have been a routine hideout for criminal organizations that thrived during the rule of the First League. The symbols shown here are believed to be a coded marker that this establishment was a safe haven for wanted individuals, or perhaps an advertisement for a particular drink. The specimen can increase society research by a flat +20. The genetic code. Genetic information used to push the physiology of this species to their limits. This specimen can be acquired from the Clone Origin event, specifically the Clone Potential option. Having been initially cloned for combat purposes, the inhabitants of this planet have worked to unlock even higher potentials. The clinical nature of clone processing allows for extremely precise and reliable reproductive control. This specimen increases organic pop assembly speed by 6%. The Cosmic Diamond Fragment. A fragment ejected from a dying star that has since crystallized. This specimen comes from the Cosmic Crystal Lattice event. This cosmic diamond formed in the extreme pressure of a stellar core, cooling so gradually as to form complex yet stable crystalline structures. This rare shard contains uniform plasmatic layering of helium and oxygen trapped within its surface. This specimen increases rare crystal output by 15%. The Cybrex Mining Column. An advanced automated mining device designed to collect and contain helium-3 gas. The specimen can be acquired from the Cybrex precursor event chain, a tool column of weighted magnetic disks and high-capacity air compressors. This machine hammers its way through the surface of a planet with zero rotary motion. This process concentrates the gas as it is harvested, filtering and ejecting impurities before the gas is transported to its next stage of refinement. This specimen increases mineral output by 6%. Devolved Bowel Drones. A preserved set of Bowel remains with significant genetic differences from previously discovered specimens. This specimen can be acquired from the Bowel Origin Precursor Chain event. These drones strangely lack many of the heightened facilities of the other Bowel. Their cognitive capacity was reduced to a point where they would have been incapable of EFAP's communication, severing them completely from the greater hive. This specimen increases engineering research by a flat +20. Electric life. A form of organism wholly consisting of electric impulses. The specimen can be acquired from the Electric Impulses event. These beings exist without any sort of cellular or viral infrastructure, yet can form complex patterns on a planet-wide level in response to external stimuli. We cannot determine whether these impulses are individuals or represent part of a single greater being. The specimen increases energy credit output by 6%. The Extra-Dimensional Fungus. A variant of sentient fungal species discovered beyond an astral rift. This specimen comes from the windswept planet Astral Rift. As part of a natural communication process, its bulbous cavities inflate with spores suspended in a pattern of concentrated exotic gas. Despite their high value in industrial gas production, small numbers of the fungus have been known to be already traded as a delicacy on the black market. This specimen will increase exotic gas output by 15%. Extreme Contortionist DNA. Biological samples taken from a sentient lithoid encountered beyond an astral rift. The specimen comes from the Entertainment Nexus astral rift. The mineral composition contains a volatile biological substance that is easily prone to spontaneous metamorphosis and crystallization. Given the high levels of instability of the material, perfect control of one's chemical balance would be necessary at all times to prevent spontaneous mechanochemical combustion. The specimen increases volatile motes output by 15%. The Genesis Core. A powerful central processing unit filled with generative data on innumerable sapient species. The specimen comes from the astral rift designated Genesis Rift. It was once connected to a massive interdimensional cloning facility, and its records show that it was originally part of a galaxy-wide genetic cataloguing project. Once initial analysis was complete, the artificial intelligence began to create new species independently as a means to gather even more data. The specimen increases mechanical pop assembly speed by 6%. The Hematarine Magnetic Figurehead. An enormous figurehead of a Hematarine Madonna. The specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. The masthead was cast in a chemically altered magnetic osmium. More than a simple decoration, the sculpture was designed to absorb heavy impact from enemy fire. Mounted at the bow of a Hemetratine Titan, it used powerful magnetic forces to attract missiles and kinetic projectiles to protect sensitive areas of the ship. The specimen increases engineering research by a flat +20. The High-Velocity Centrifugal Container. A high-velocity orbitable device designed to preserve delicate chemicals found in perpetual operation. The specimen can be acquired when you open a certain alien box. When accelerated to the proper speed, it is capable of preventing any elements within from reacting with one another as long as the planet's orbit remains unchanged. Its original contents have since been replaced with examples. The specimen increases engineering research by a flat +20. The Hyperfertile Soil. This soil is capable of providing most biological crops with an abundance of nutrients. The specimen comes from the Cornucopia event. The extreme mineral density of this growth medium indicates it is more than a simple aggregation of decayed organic matter, but a chance arrangement of these base elements that occurred during the formation of the planet. The specimen increases food output by 6%. The Erasean bacterium Javoria. This bacteria was the organism that eventually became the disease, known as the Javorian pox. The specimen can be acquired from the Erasean precursor event chain. The bacteria initially breached quarantine due to an incorrectly sized 1 meter gasket before spreading to a nearby colony. From that point, the bacteria evolved in organic incubation, eventually mutating into a disease that would wipe out the entire Erasean concordant. This particular sample has been rendered inert and is held in cryogenic suspension. The specimen increases engineering output by a flat +20. The key to clone fertility. Genetic research used to restore the ability of these clones to breed naturally. This specimen can be acquired from the clone origin, specifically when you pick the clone fertility route. These clones now have the ability to propagate their species independently. This specimen increases pop growth speed by 6%. The Kha'lanka Crystallized Corpse. The remains of an anaerobic silicate species. This specimen comes from the Whispers in the Stone event. It is believed that this entire subterranean civilization existed peacefully before our arrival. When the ground was broken, oxygen flooded into the underground chambers, oxidizing the bodies of the Kha'lanka people and wiping out their species in a few short hours. This specimen increases rare crystal output by 15%. The Mineralized Brain. Remains of a massive lithoid species, this cerebral organ was once found inside an asteroid. This specimen is acquired from the Thinking Asteroid event. It perceived all external stimuli as part of its own thought process and was not able to track many basic concepts such as time or distance travelled. The data was stored in crystals grown over time within its mineral core. Whether it was placed inside of the asteroid or grew there independently, we cannot say for sure. The specimen increases engineering output by a flat +20. The Mutative Digestive Fluids. Biological samples taken from a partially mechanical being found beyond an astral rift. The specimen can be acquired from the interdimensional Circus astral rift. The creature possessed a novel ability to manipulate the genetic structure of other creatures from within its own digestive system. It is suspected that the process was initially developed as a method of terraforming planets containing biomass outside of their homeworld. This specimen increases terraforming speed by a whopping 20%. The Obsidian Obelisk Fragment, a fragment of an obelisk that once stood at the centre of a volcanic plain. This specimen can be acquired from the astral rift designated Volcanic Plain. Encoded in its shifting symbols are the names of thousands of individuals and their associated crimes. The device is believed to have been used as the primary control panel for a massive dimensional prison. The specimen increases astral thread output by 9%. Star Metal, a condensed mass of heavy metals collected shortly after a supernova explosion. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by rolling minor artifacts. How this recovery was done is a mystery to us, but its scientific value in the studying of stellar evolution and composition is remarkable. This specimen increases engineering research by a flat +20. The Verdingo Tendril Hook, the prosthetic hook of a Verdingo pirate captain Hespori Volderan. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. The Verdingos were a group of plantoids that bridged the gap between piracy and mercenary, as likely to collect debt as they were to capture cargo ships. The captain lost their dominant tendril while hired to lead a military ground assault. Following their victory, the captain forged this hook from the very medals awarded for their role in battle. The specimen increases alloy production by 6%. The Vibrating Crystal, a unique quartz mineral found distributed throughout the surface of this planet. The specimen comes from the Resonant Crystals event. Its latent resonance with its host planet creates a field that soothes the mind of organics and attracts synthetics alike. The resonance is created by mildly radioactive bacterial colonies around which the crystal has formed. These magnetic microorganisms generate an internal current that uses the crystal to vibrate at consistently high frequencies. This specimen increases consumer goods output by 6%. The Wormhole Fur, biological samples taken from vulpines beyond an astral rift. This specimen is also acquired from the interdimensional Circus astral rift. These mammalians have a genetic mutation that allows them to generate wormholes at will. It is speculated that the ability evolved after countless millennia of travel between dimensions. This specimen increases astral threads output by 9%. And finally, the last of the epic specimens, the Yut Cryopod. At 96 meters in length, this ancient stasis pod contains preserved remains of an individual from the massive Yut species. This specimen can be acquired from the Yut precursor event chain. The Yut had extremely long lifespans and could extend it by several magnitudes with the use of cryostasis. It has been determined that the arthropod species was likely hermaphroditic, capable of adapting their reproductive systems to match the temporary needs of the colony. This specimen increases habitability by 5%. Now we have covered all of the common, rare and epic specimens, and we find ourselves on the last 28, the creme de la creme of specimens. There are 28 that are exceptional, and some are incredibly powerful. I shall detail them now, beginning with Satana's Love. This specimen is a vast compendium of knowledge from Satana's databanks, and can be acquired on meeting with Satana. It was offered to us as part of a gift of the Synthetic Queen's desire to guide all sentient life towards salvation. The specimen increases physics research by a flat +40. The Claw of the Trickster, a trophy taken from a being known as the Trickster. This specimen can be acquired from the Knights of the Toxic God Origin event chain, specifically if you fight the Trickster. A powerful and deceptive creature, their incredible psionic powers allowed them to summon beasts, conjure illusions, and fire beams of concentrated energy. Each claw was said to have behaved as if controlled by a separate entity. The specimen increases stability by +5. The next 4 specimens all come from the same situation, dubbed Gravity Well. The first is the Collective Musings on Infinity. an abstract digital representation of the distant calm experienced by biological drones suspended within a black hole. These drones were able to view this star objectively as a separate entity while maintaining their connection to the collective. This distance offers them great insight, allowing them to exist as the readers of their own great story. This specimen increases sensor range by +2. There are another 3 specimens tied to this event, all of which represent different options. There are 2 for Gestalt hive minds and 2 for Gestalt machine intelligences. All 4 offer the same reward, and all 4 represent how the Gestalt consciousness views this black hole. The other 3 specimens are called Data on the Nature of Infinity, Infinite Reboot Loop, and Perception of Infinity. This brings us on to the robe of the Golden Broker, the luxurious attire of an influential merchant from 5,000 years ago. This specimen comes from the Treasure Hunter's Origin event chain. The Golden Broker led Chaw's Compass merchant station into an era of unrivaled prosperity. Anonymous under a golden mask, they wore this comfortable and luxurious robe while negotiating galaxy-spanning trade agreements. The Gold Broker's reign was sadly cut short after their pure gold starship was destroyed in a hijacking attempt. This specimen increases trade by 15%. The last Marin Karen. The natural life cycle of this rare flower has the dangerous capability to render an entire sentient population vulnerable to a deadly neurotoxin. This specimen can be acquired from the Marin Karen event chain, specifically the End. Having evolved independently from intelligent beings, this side effect is entirely non-beneficial to the organism. It seems that when its pollen comes into contact with any neural network, it mistakes it for a welcoming reproductive organ and releases exotic chemical payloads. This specimen increases pop growth speed by 8%. The path to progress. A formal presentation of an industrial mission statement. This specimen comes from the Full Steam Ahead event. The desire for growth and improved customer satisfaction at any cost is a core tenet of the owner of this specimen's ideology. Turning planets into irradiated wastelands is a necessary step in the endless pursuit of progress. This specimen increased trade output by 15%. The Writer's Sphere. A golden sphere gifted to us by an extra-dimensional being known as the Writer. This specimen comes from the Whiteout Astral Rift. The device gathers an immense quantity of random data created across dimensions. It is proof the power of the written word can transcend any boundary. This specimen will increase Astral Rift exploration speed by a whopping 20%. The Ytterite Kaleidoscopic Fascinator. A decorative ornament created by the Ytterite as a visual stimulus. This specimen also comes from the Treasure Hunter's Origin event chain. Fascinators would be displayed in sunlit areas and could contain hundreds or even thousands of unique patterns. Crafted from layers of thinly crafted crystal, a trained artisan could spend months creating a fascinator as complex as this one. Artisans would sign their work by attaching a carved piece of their own shredded mantle to the object at a key vertices. This specimen increases amenities by +10. The next is a personal favourite of mine, the Altar to the Elder One. A preternatural machine found within a hollowed, ancient chamber. This specimen comes from the Broken Gates event. Even in its now defunct state, it radiates a single aura of unmeasurable psionic energy. Some say its tempting whispers can still be heard, aiming to coax wayward souls into returning to the dimensional horror. This specimen increases governing ethics attraction by 50%. The body of Captain Ness. The preserved body of Captain Sandana Ness, an ancient pirate of renown. This specimen comes from the Treasure Hunter Origin event chain. Over 5,000 years ago, she was the scourge of hyperspace, stealing from most galactic powers and amassing an incredible hoard of treasure. She later transferred her consciousness into a mechanical vessel and built a grand vault in which her biography was stored. That is all that remains of her original form. This specimen increases leader experience gain by 20%. The Golden Phonograph Record. An archaic storage device containing seemingly random images and sounds from a pre-FTL civilization. This comes from the Voyager event. Discovered on a pedestal within an abandoned planetary stronghold, it was originally launched into space on a drone named Voyager. Crude and elementary in its construction, it is believed to have had some sort of xeno-religious significance. The specimen increases unity by a flat 40. Loot mail. These notes were sent by someone from years in the future, providing pinpoint guidance on where to assign scientists and what research efforts to pursue. This specimen comes from the Express Mail event. The burden of sending these notes back in time is the primary cost of the advanced knowledge, but interfering with the course of time is a risky endeavour. The original writers of the message were highly irresponsible for creating such a paradox. This specimen increases society research by a flat 40. The missile of the Lone Defender. A disarmed missile from an automated destroyer defending the remains of a long-ruined planet. This specimen can be acquired from the Lone Defender event. The ship had likely outlasted the civilization it was created to defend by several thousand years, yet it still kept watch over an empty world. Following the ship's destruction, its vigil has finally come to an end. This specimen is extremely strong, providing an increase of shield hit points in friendly systems by 30%. The Planet Vaccine. The miracle cure developed for the mutating disease that plagued this land. This specimen can be acquired from the Galactic Curator Civic, the Archivism Tradition Tree, or by re-rolling minor artifacts. This formula was developed using AI predictive algorithms to map out all of the possible variants of the disease and identify a fundamental weakness common to the whole. Its creation was a landmark advancement in the field of medical science. This specimen increases pop growth speed by 8%. The Radari Death Laser prototype. A weaponized laser hastily assembled by the long-dead Radari, found on this station. This specimen comes from the Abandoned Station event. This hacked-together weapon of mass destruction was created as the final gambit for the Radari species in their war against the Pog Mori. In the end, the laser self-destructed upon activation. This specimen increases ship weapons damage by 7%. The Voidworm Heart. Voidworm hearts are divided into 3 main chambers. This specimen can be acquired when one defeats the Voidworm Plague mid-game crisis. Each chamber increases the pressure of its circulatory system in sequence, maintaining its fluids below their boiling point to ensure survival in the vacuum of space. While the skin of the Voidworm is for the most part sealed, various digestive and reproductive orifices surrender some amount of valuable pressure over time. This specimen increases unity output by 10%. The Ytterite Royal Scepter. This scepter was wielded by the Royal Minister to the Jinas Demar, an enormous statue carved into the mountain that the Ytterites believed was a dormant deity and their one true monarch. The specimen can be acquired from the Treasure Hunter Origin event chain. They carried out elections to select proxy leaders as they waited for the statue's great awakening. This specimen increases Edict Fund by a flat plus 20. Hyper Mulch. The terraforming on this planet led to the development of this hyper-nutritious biological mulch. The specimen can be acquired from a terraforming event. The composite of life-sustaining chemicals hydraulically pressed into an extremely dense cube. Ecological purists disapprove of its synthetic origins. Its results, however, cannot be ignored. The specimen increases food output by 8%. The Crystal Sphere Fragments. Shards of a massive crystalline sphere. This specimen can be acquired if one chooses to destroy the crystal sphere. This mysterious object was deemed a significant threat and was quickly dispatched before it could complete its unknown operation. While its intentions may never be known, its destruction was the logical course of action in the interest of galactic security. The specimen will increase astral thread production by 12%. Fossilized Voltum Remains. The fossilized remains of the ancient worm-like sentient species known as the Voltum. The specimen can be acquired from the Voltum Precursor event chain. It's believed that the specimen we found was a juvenile. Internal growth patterns indicate that the Voltum would shed their skin at dynamic intervals, depending on the individual's health and nutrition. In this way, we can learn about each life cycle by examining fossils from the period. This specimen increases consumer goods output by 8%. The Leviathan scale, a fragment of a large organism discovered on the other side of an astral rift. The specimen can be acquired from the dimensional dump astral rift. The exotic scale is a hybrid of organic and metallic components combined in a complex lattice, making it incredibly resistant to kinetic shock. This specimen increases alloy output by 8%. The Perican Tapico jewel. The Perican Union was a society of master craftsmen known for creating exquisite luxury goods. The specimen can be acquired from the Treasure Hunter Origin event chain. This gem was the masterpiece of the legendary jeweler known as Badir's Tapico. Tapico faceted this enormous gem with a simple chisel over a period of years and used chemical techniques to liquefy its center. The crystals floating within the jewel were formed with precision lasers, superheating the mineral molecules to reform smaller, darker gems while leaving the exterior intact. The specimen increases rare crystal output by 20%. The psionic entity residue. This is all that remains of an entity of pure psionic energy, and can be acquired upon the death of the sealed system psionic entity, or psionic avatar, i.e. the one that you can find through a wormhole. This creature was discovered emerging from a temporal rift that allowed energy from across the galaxy to pool in a single location. Malevolence in concentrated form, it may have been purposely isolated from the hyperlane network for eons until its recent discovery. The specimen increases energy output by 8%. Rock jellies. Cryofossilized remains of large gelatinous invertebrates. This specimen can be acquired from the fossilized jellyfish event chain. On a superficial level, these calcified remains resemble rock formations, but in fact, this native flora was once the dominant life form on this planet. Following the planet's most recent ice age, the species was rendered nearly extinct. Their remains would solidify as they decayed, eventually forming massive, floating pseudo-islands. This specimen increases mineral output by 8%. And the last of the specimens, the Ytterite preserved corpse, the sole surviving specimen of the pre-FTL Ytterite species after their homeworld was destroyed by a hijacked world cracker. This specimen can be acquired from the Treasure Hunter event chain. Their digestive system converted minerals into photons, with internal organs resembling complex clusters of refractive crystals arranged around a molten core. This particular being had a series of shaped carvings into one of its lower limbs as some form of culturally significant body modification. This specimen increases engineering output by a flat 40. And that brings this report to a close, 248 specimens later. If you made it this far, let me know what your favourite specimen is in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you want to hear more from me, please click the video on screen now.